All right, good evening and welcome to the City of Sunbury Finance Committee meeting. It's October 18th, 2023. It is 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor St. John.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper. Here. Mr. Capel.
Here.
Mr. Neff.
Here.
Mr. Grumney.
Here.
And Mr. Martin.
Here.
And Mr. Gross will be late.
All right, we had a meeting on September 20th and there are minutes in the packet for review. I'll make a motion. Second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John.
Yes.
Mr. Grumney.
Yes.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Abstain.
Mrs. Cooper. Yes. Mr. Neff.
Yes.
5 yeas.
All right. Good deal. We have new business, the 2024 budget. I want to say thanks to Finance Director Stefan, Mr. Hennessy, I know the Chief of Police. Not only are they moving and things are very much in flux and in flight with their workspace, but I know I've met with at least a few of them several times about the budget since our last finance meeting. Very much appreciate the clarity and looking forward to further refining this as we go towards end of year for an approval. Ms. Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. As you can see in your packet, I have the consolidated budget overview on page 5. And this is the overview of all of the funds with their expected balance as of the end of this year, the anticipated revenues, the appropriations, and the projected balance as of 12/31/2024. All of the details behind these numbers are in the following pages. On the next page are the revenue details, and I apologize, it's very small and difficult to see, but it goes through all of details on every revenue item there, and it ties to that schedule. On pages 7 through the end of it, 7 through 13, we have the budgeted appropriations by line item. And this is really where all the details lie, where we can see all of the anticipated expenditures for the city for 2024. I can tell you that the general fund is looking to spend about $6.5 million. That's up about $1 million from last year's budget, primarily due to extra capital items, wage increases, and a few extra staff positions that were added.
How long can we last if we spend $6 million more than we're getting in on a yearly basis?
$6 million. So I assume you're referring to the anticipated revenues and the appropriations on the first page of the consolidated budget overview.
On page 5, yeah.
Yes, that is slightly inflated. The appropriations are slightly inflated, or rather the revenues are slightly deflated due to the bond, the $3.3 million in the bond that we have showing in the expected balance in the blue column there.
Okay.
Maybe if I could add to that just a little bit. So I know you meant $1 million more, not $6 million more.
No, it says that we're expected balance.
You are
23 and
you are at the bottom.
24,
Okay.
there's $6 million difference.
Sorry, I thought you were referencing the general fund. Apologize for that.
No.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and I can explain how that's going through in the capital projects fund. I have some details behind that. But I don't anticipate the expenditures to outrun the revenues on a typical basis. A lot of the money is being spent in the impact fees, which we have accumulated over several years for the police facilities and municipal facilities. So those have been accumulated in prior years, not showing as a current year revenue item, but it is showing as a current year appropriation. So there's a mismatch of the revenues to the expenses.
Call out a couple others.
Yeah.
I had a chance to go through this and it really helped me understand. We had the COVID dollars that we're planning on utilizing next year. Those are included in the appropriation. So in other words, there's no revenue tied to it next year, but the expense will happen. We've got $3.3 million in the building improvements, correct?
Yes,
Which is a one-time thing and something we've been planning for.
Correct.
There is $600,000 in what I would call sewer engineering and it's kind of a two-phase project. There's about $600,000 of more expense next year, but we expect to recoup that, especially over the long term. I'll say there's an assessment gap. So our Little Walnut Creek Interceptor sewer, we are funding. So the city funded it initially, and it will be repaid through assessments on homes over a 20-year period for each home in Rolling Hills and Price Ponds. And one thing Daryl and I think picked up on today, we're a little bit short on our revenue right now from that, but it's really due to the way property taxes are calculated in arrears. So for example, Damon's house, my house, all of our neighbors' houses, we haven't paid property taxes yet. So we haven't paid anything into the pot, but we'll also go back to pay the debt service. We also have a couple items in here. We budgeted $500,000 for the parking lot improvement on the corner of Granville and Columbus. And we are showing a $300,000 increase in police wages, I believe, primarily by adding, I think it's primarily wages and benefits, but I could be wrong on that. But we are looking at adding a sergeant that we already had budgeted this year, just didn't pull the trigger on. So it may have shown kind of an inflated end balance at the end of the year. We do plan on filling that next year. We would have a replacement officer for that sergeant. We look to add another officer, and I think there's a discussion around whether that officer would be a school resource officer that would only be at 50% of the full-time rate. So I think back to Dana's, I know I didn't answer all of your questions, but those are some of the big ticket items that I picked up on. Daryl and Dana have helped me understand. This number has been whittled down significantly since the last time you saw this budget, by probably about $1 million or thereabout. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, so that like good stewardship that we've shown this past year, we're going to have to, bite the bullet on some of these things and hire people and do capital improvement projects like we're promising the public. Is that fair? Great.
Yeah, absolutely. That hit the nail on the head. A few other items too. The parks, we're anticipating extra money going to be spent on the reservoir parks and other park monies.
That's about $650,000 or thereabout.
Yeah.
Those things that we've been budgeting for, but it's not like we're going to get the revenue in the same year as the expense. It's like we've been planning for it. And yeah, this is going to be next year is going to be a big year where we're expending the funds.
And of course, the debt is up this year as well, because we have to pay the interest and principal on the $3.3 million. So the debt will be increased to pay that. And that's built into the budget.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but I think you've done a pretty good job being prudent in your budgeting of revenues. It may be more accurate, but you still feel like you're taking a prudent approach at that?
I do. The largest piece of our income tax, our revenues, our municipal income tax, and we've got 4.8 budgeted for 2024. Currently, we're sitting at just under 3.5 million for 2023. With still 3 more months to go in collections. So I think we'll get there. And the 4.8 doesn't anticipate any growth. It's just a flat number based on 2023 numbers. So yes, I do feel that that's still a very conservative approach.
We're on pace to, if I'm not mistaken, exceed last year's income tax revenues by about $800,000 or something.
That sounds about right. It's been a minute since I've looked at those figures, but that sounds about right.
We haven't stopped growing.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I feel like I'm in a court case. Would you agree, Miss?
So yeah, that's the budget. And I just in anticipation for next meeting, I will have a wage ordinance to come along with the budget as well. And this, if you recall, we took the wage scale out of the section 139 from the codified ordinances in anticipation that we would include a wage scale for all positions, all approved positions for every year as a part of the budget. So I've started working on that, and you will see it next meeting when we go through the first reading of the budget for 2024. And it'll show all of the positions that have been currently approved and those that have been proposed that are included in the appropriations budget, as well as a min and a max. And those numbers will be based on area data that was collected by the MORPC, their salary survey from regional information from other local governments in our area. So I'll incorporate all that data, and hopefully we'll be at a good starting point to look at that in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever it is. And you guys can say yay or nay, or we can adjust the mins and maxes based on what you feel is appropriate.
Is there anything that we have to do for council salaries? I remember I thought last year we said what council salary was going to be, but we would have to say it again every year that we agreed to it. Does that sound
To
familiar
adjust it
to
to the
anybody?
benefits rate.
Yeah, there was a plan in place to stay ahead of the OPERS minimum, and it wasn't able to be approved for future years. So if an increase was proposed, if an increase were to happen, it would need to be proposed and approved this year for next year's pay.
Okay.
We'll look into that and see if we need to bring an ordinance to the council.
Thank you.
When do you expect, when would you like to have the budget approved?
Anytime prior to the beginning of next year, honestly, it doesn't matter to me. 3 readings is, I think, appropriate at a minimum. So the first meeting in December would be the third reading of the budget. If we do November, the first meeting in November is the first reading, and then the second meeting in November is the second reading, and then the third reading would be the first meeting in December. So that would be fine. Unless you have a different.
We need to do it as an emergency.
No, appropriations ordinances do not need to be passed by emergency. They automatically go into effect. There's no 30-day waiting period for appropriations
Oh, okay.
ordinances.
We do have a third meeting.
Yeah, I was
in
gonna say it's
November.
conceivable.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's
a 30.
there's 3 meetings in November.
So if that meeting holds, then we could, if council desires to pass it, then that could be done.
Sounds good. Right. Anything else about 2024 budget? If you have questions about the budget, I would encourage you to reach out to Dana or Daryl or the chief or deputy chief, any of the departments that added to the inputs to this. And they're doing a great job. And it really needs to go with saying that you're doing this while your offices are being torn apart.
Yes.
A little disruptive workplace.
And I tried to put on the appropriations by line item. I tried to be as detailed as I could on those lines so that if you had a question about a larger expense, then you could look over and see kind of what is included in that. So, but if there's anything on here that you feel needs some more explanation, please give me a call or stop by my office, wherever that is.
And I might just add just a couple of points. One is we did increase the training budget for the council members as requested. So next year, an opportunity to participate in the Delaware leadership program if council member chooses to do so. We have also tried to incorporate items from the strategic planning session as well. For example, we talked about a big and comprehensive plan. We talked about, looking at our zoning code. So we've included placeholders for those as well. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that strategic plan and trying to make sure that we're continue to march forward on the priorities that you've identified.
Thank you.
I think it's a really good way to budget. I mean, if we end up not pulling the trigger on some of those things, it rolls over to the following year, but it's really good that we have those placeholders in there. There are wasps flying around in here. Is that okay?
Off to move it.
Okay. It's a little toasty in here. Did we get a pre-run of the heat earlier today?
I did.
Understood.
Preheated the room before we got here.
Good planning. All right, we're on to 2023 Second Amendment amended appropriations.
So, thank you. I have a few items that need to be increased before the end of this year. Two of those items are in the general fund. All are in contractual services. In the admin department, $150,000, and in the street department, $50,000 for a total of $200,000. And the third item is in the capital projects fund. And I'll just explain this one really quickly because it's easy to explain, and then we can talk about giving you some more details behind the other items. The capital projects fund increase proposed for $537,716.19. This is the amount of reimbursements that the city has received from the OWDA for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades loan. Since we received those in revenues and they've been posted to our revenue account, we also have to pay those out to our consultant, to CT Engineers. So I actually have paid some of that already and need to pay the additional amount, but I need more money in the budget to do so. So it's an in and out situation. It's a net zero. So that's what that is. As far as the general fund monies go, the $150,000 primarily is for legal and engineering fees. And Mr. Ghost had asked that I provide him some details. And I did not provide this to all of council, but I can certainly pass it out and let you all look at it if you like. Mr. Ghost, do you see it on your desk?
Yes,
there?
I see. I'll pass it down.
Okay. What I've done is provided all of the expenses for the entire year to date on these line items. And I wanted to break it down to show what categories these are in. The largest amount is in engineering. And the total that we've spent in engineering, and this isn't all engineering, this is just engineering that was paid from the general fund admin department. That was $294,000 year to date. We've also spent in legal matters $135,000 year to date. Again, just for the admin department. This doesn't include sewer treatment plant things or street department items. It's just the admin. Economic development consulting, $20,000. None of that money was budgeted or considered during the time we appropriated for 2023. What else? Insurance was up from last year, so that was an under budgeted item. All in all, we have spent $561,000 out of this account this year to date. We originally appropriated $380,000. We bumped up the appropriation a few months ago by $220,000, bringing it to $600,000. So with the $600,000 appropriation, we only have a little less than $40,000 left to go for the rest of the year. And knowing that there will be at least $107,000 left in expenses and probably more, we need at least $70,000. And without knowing everything, I just increased it to 150 just to get us through the whole year. I have this breakdown all on this page here, and I'm going to pass it down.
I have like
Okay.
150 there.
Yes, there's 2 copies of it,
Okay.
so you guys can look. Basically, there were items that we did not anticipate: economic development, media services, things like that were added throughout the year that need to be accounted for in the appropriations. So this extra money is needed to help pay for those costs as well as our ongoing engineering and legal fees. And it's the same situation basically for the street department for the 50,000, although not as dire. I know that there will be more invoices coming from CT and from MS Consultants for the Parkway planning, that engineering project. I anticipate that we'll be under appropriated for that. So I adjusted it up by 50,000. If council would approve that, I think that would get us, I know that would help us get through the rest of the year. So I have details on that as well.
There are ways to recoup things like that, where we're talking about like forward thinking projects and planning that, you know, obviously are part of our strategy to be able to grow responsibly. But I mean, Daryl or Dana, are there ways that we can look to recoup that? Or is it just, this is upfront, you know, cost to play and, you know, we're just setting up future councils to live in prosperity? Either or, please.
Can't think of any ways. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, let me think a little bit more about that. But yeah, I mean, some of these, again, these are kind of one-time only expenses, the district level planning for the Sunbury Parkway. You know, again, shouldn't be showing up again in a future budget, although we do add some additional funding for comprehensive planning there. But you know, that might be the type of thing where, again, if we plan properly, we get the kind of development that we need, and we're thinking, you know, strategically about its revenue impact on the city, and that's really all a part of what that district level plan is trying to help us do. But you know, I mean, maybe we should be a little bit more active in trying to find matching sources or other kinds of revenues to help us on the planning front.
And as we grow, there's an increase in income also, right? I mean, it's not.
But I mean, that's what the mayor alluded to earlier, right? That our general or our income tax collections 800-ish thousand higher than the prior year. I mean, that's just
In the
know,
monthly
growth.
sewer bills, there's more of that money coming in every aspect. Income is increasing.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But these planning efforts are usually isn't a, you know, they're a cost item more
Right.
so necessarily than a they don't have a revenue attached to them to help pay for them long term. But
I was looking at one thing on here. I'm sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
no, I was gonna say, I mean, hopefully the planning pays for itself, but it's hard to connect it directly to, you know, to a revenue source. Go ahead, Mayor.
There's one on here that wouldn't necessarily tie together because it's two different titles from different vendors, but CT Consultants, and then Soil and Materials Engineers and Squire Patton Boggs, all trying to address the gas station remediation for the Martindale property. This is over like $100,000. I mean, we have a parking lot over there, and we're still trying to get the state to say, yes, no further action covenant, you know, that we're free and clear. But I think it's also a lesson for us as we go to look to purchase property or other things, you know, having these environmental impact studies on the front end to understand total risk. I mean, Tim, we bought that or assumed that, what, 10 years ago? Dave?
Probably, yeah.
15 maybe?
Dave will probably know a little bit better, but that sounds about right. We've been
Yeah, I'd say 10 or 12.
getting close
years
to
ago.
that.
Yeah.
Past decade, I would say.
And there were many times I remember being in those meetings where it was like, okay, do we need to go like another level of security, you know, pump the ground full of, I'm making this up, styrofoam or something, so like nothing comes out. And I mean, it's just gone every single step of the way. You think you're done, and then it's like another $10,000 bill. Those are the types of things. I was telling another elected official candidate that's new to politics that was asking, you know, hey, what's your most frustrating thing? And I'm like, property owner disputes and anything related to zoning disputes, because you have to go back and figure out like all these things. And every time, you know, we asked Dave Breen to go and do something or CT to go do a survey, you know, these aren't like small numbers. It's $5,000, $10,000,
Mhm.
and there's no revenue tied to this. It's just doing the right thing and making sure that at the end of the day, somebody's got a clean parcel or we have a clean parcel that can be transferred if we ever want to.
Could look at it as lack of litigation.
Yeah, this is definitely, you're 100% right.
That is
You're
always
100%.
good.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
But I know, like, I know for those that listen in online, or you know, if you're just listening and thinking, oh my goodness, we're spending $650,000 or $700,000 on professional services. I mean, these aren't all forward thinking that are going to have revenue tied to them. It's like shoring up. It's probably strong, I mean, the sins of the past, you know, just, you know, fixing things that need fixed. Like if your water heater goes out, you got to fix it. It's not cool, but it does.
You get wasps in your heater.
Right. Right.
Call Amber.
Thanks for diving into that, Tim and Dana.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions, Mr. Ghost? On any
Not
of
at
that?
this time.
Okay.
I'm okay.
I'm going to pass leadership back over to the chairman of finance committee. We're on to the credit card policy.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, credit card policy. I think Ms. Steffen has some information for us. We're trying to make a decision on what direction to take tonight, I believe.
Yes. You've seen this credit card policy a couple months ago, I believe, for the first time. And tonight we just would like to revisit, and I would like to give my recommendation on the course of action that I think would be best. As you may recall, we have two options here. We have the administrator option or the compliance officer option. Just to refresh your memories, the administrator would it's the custody and control model is the actual name of it. There would be a custody kept of all credit cards at all times in the possession of the finance director. And anytime that card needed to be used, it would require a sign out and tight restrictions given on that sign out. As opposed to the compliance officer model, where we would have a designee, someone who is not authorized to use the card and not the director of finance. This person would report to council anytime council has a request about what's been spent on the credit card. Anytime council would like to see the statements, this person would be obligated to share that data directly with council. It kind of makes it a separation of duties there where there's a tighter control on what gets spent on the credit card. So my recommendation would be the compliance officer model. It would allow for another staff in our office to have control over that. Am I saying that right? Compliance officer. Yeah, that's the one we want. Okay, sorry. I was confusing myself for a second. The compliance officer model would be my recommendation. It would take the credit card out of my office and out of my control. Therefore, this individual who has it would be able to answer to council. And I believe, according to the ORC, that designee has to be recommended by the mayor. The mayor has to call that person.
Would that person have the credit cards, or that person would just be told when they were going to be spent?
They would have
They would have
custody of them.
So if chief, somebody needed it, they would come to that party and ask for the credit card.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But then isn't there a single compliance officer on top of, because individuals, I think my recollection was that individuals would have cards, which they could then use, but there's a compliance officer that's, I think,
Yes,
has a reporting relationship back to the council. So
correct.
it's not the chief coming back and reporting or
That's what I was
the
confused,
service
'cause I
director
remember
coming back
talking
and
about
reporting.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
Yes,
single-
That makes, you're correct.
And we
I'm more
determined
comfortable with
it
that.
couldn't be the director of finance. It's actually a limited number of people. I think we agreed that it was probably me. Because I don't have a card. So,
It could
I'm not the
be,
director of finance.
it's actually detailed here on page 18 of your packet. If you want to read, it's just a short paragraph on the compliance officer model. It could be Mr. Hennessy, or we have a new finance clerk in the office who could also take on this responsibility.
Clarification, would each like head of the department then have a credit card then that they would use? So say there's 4 or 5 out there that would. Okay.
Correct, yes.
And then would there be like an authorization limit? If it's more than X, they have to get approval, or is it, I don't know.
There is no authorization limit right now. The maximum on each card is 1,000. So that would be basically the limit.
It's pretty low for
Mhm.
standards. I mean, we've got, I think, a minimum at a company that I work at, minimum of 1,000, and then, next level up is like 5, the next level like 10 or 15 or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's low risk.
It is 1,000 per card.
Yeah.
And then we have a quarterly review process
Correct.
by the compliance officer, reviewing the number of cards and the transactions, I presume,
Mhm.
and then if necessary, on an as-needed basis, if there's a question, you bring it to council. The compliance officer, which
Yes. Mhm. And this could happen anyway. If the mayor does want to assign our new finance clerk as the compliance officer, she could come to the meeting and present her findings or prepare a report, which I would present, whichever you would prefer. So that's my recommendation. So to get this resolution and this policy approved, I would just need to put together a resolution for next council meeting. And if you're okay with me putting in the compliance officer model as I recommend, then I will move forward as such. I'm okay with that.
I would be in favor of that.
Yep, sounds fair.
Thank you.
This has been talked about for at least the past 6 years.
Before Dana, definitely.
On the crossing the goal line.
Cross this
Okay.
off.
Right in there with the wastewater utility, right?
Or the Sunbury Estates trees.
Yeah.
Touche.
That's true. Come on.
We got
We're about to get some action on that one.
it done slowly but surely.
I was gonna say, that's another thing that's in our budget for next year as well, trees.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the pursuit of the infrastructure grant. So this sort of came about because I had a conversation with resident Frank Rogers, who's former state rep. He's running for, I think, District 30 over by Zanesville this November. And he referred me to Senator Andrew Brenner and House Rep Beth Lear. So I contacted them by phone, had a nice cordial conversation with both of them. And so this capital bucket of money, a large bucket of money, is available next year. They're going to be voting on it sometime probably in May. And so both Ms. Lear and Mr. Senator Brenner advised that we should prepare a detailed email. That's all the application process is. And we send it to them both. They both vote on it. They're in each house. And so that will take place in May. And I was advocating and having questions. I wasn't advocating, I was having questions to them about the park, J.R. Smith Park, and if we could pursue some money for that. And they were pretty enthusiastic about submitting a grant for that. And we have a pretty good shot at getting some money. So, and then I think it was Senator Brenner brought up the fact that there is a section of this grant for infrastructure that's also available. And he and Ms. Lear both suggested that we pursue something down that line too.
For
So,
example, like the East Cherry Street widening or Higher Erie Trail finish.
that's kind of what I thought. And I think Mr. Hennessy had that in mind, and so did Ms. Steffen. I think Mr. Balderson, Rep. Balderson, is trying to help us with some federal dollars, but it certainly wouldn't help pursuing state help too. So,
We have about a $2.5 million gap or thereabout, depending on what the House of Representatives decides to do. If they're going to open up the rest of the year, you don't know.
they find a speaker.
Not yet.
So,
Closed for business.
yeah, and fiber also qualifies as infrastructure.
Okay.
We have that expense too to consider. So,
Gotcha. So we need to get that back to them sometime in November. They've requested, is that right?
Yeah, we've got a little bit of time, I think, to put our case together, identify the projects and share that with council. I would add that the budget that Mr. Ghost is referencing, that's a state capital budget.
Right.
And so this is a line item of a fund, I guess it's a fund. It's a fund within the capital budget that communities will compete for a portion of it. So, yeah, so again, I think you're just kind of introducing the topic at this point.
Yes.
We still got some work to do to kind of refine our list. And we've also got a little bit of time to make that happen.
Yeah, they both gave me the impression that if we can get the email to them before November 10th, maybe the middle of November at the very latest. So it's on their desk and in their system.
Is this worthwhile where we put together a single white page, one page paper on each, similar to what we did for Balderson and had Morrison sign off, and I mean, where it's very clean, they can take it in email form, but as an attachment, like, hey, this is the program that we're talking about funding.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds that's a little more structured than it sounds like the state legislature is requiring, but wouldn't be a bad strategy for us to do something like that. You're right. So you could simply pull out the piece of paper and say, this is the one I want to advocate for, and it's blank amount. The process you're describing is the federal earmarking or the community projects or whatever they call it at the federal level. So similar, but different levels. I like the idea though of maybe
I think that's a great
let's do
idea.
I mean, it's kind of
Great
white
idea.
paper-ish. We can attach them to an email.
When I was looking through the CT and professional services budget, I didn't see anything like a pro bono line. So they may have some pro bono services that they're ready to put on the table for us for this very purpose. And I appreciate them committing to that. Seemed like everything was going like in the wrong direction. They were charging us for all their services, and that's obviously not
That can't be
a
right.
good steward of public dollars. CT.
So for next steps for this particular item, what would you suggest, Mr. Hennessy or Mr. Mayor?
I was gonna say, so let me maybe take that approach. I'll work with Alyssa and we'll start to begin drafting kind of, 2 or 3 papers, whatever the case might be. That's not like it's going to be an elaborate document, but prepare those and then we'll begin to find a way to share them with council and the leadership, and you guys can give us some guidance at that point.
Did they say anything about they typically fund the final dollar? Like I know a lot of state type things. It's like if you get 90% of the way, they'll fund the last 10%. Did either one of them say that, or are they just saying, ask for what you're asking for?
They said, ask for what you want, but don't expect to get all of that.
Yeah.
Nah, I got the impression maybe 50 to 60% of what we ask would probably be seriously considered. So if we ask for $500,000, for example, for J.R. Smith, or 400,000, something like that, I got the impression 200 might be available.
So then you ask for 800.
Yeah, that's what.
That's how easy it is.
That's fine. Like, how about the PSD?
You have to verify that you're gonna actually spend 800,000 or?
Yes.
Say we need 800,000 and then do a 400,000.
Yeah, the conceptual plans done and the design done for the most part.
Awesome, Tim.
Yeah.
Thanks for making those phone calls.
Yeah, sure. I did indicate I would get you an email on the part.
Yeah.
A summary, so I'll do that.
One other thing I forgot to mention, I did mention this to you, Mayor. We do, again, part of our economic development team, the Montrose Group, they're clued into kind of how this process works as well. We do have a call with them. I don't know if it's this, next Thursday, where we're going to talk through these issues a little bit more. I'll make sure I include you on the invite so you can hear what they're saying about the best strategy for
maybe we could use their services at 4,000.
Well, maybe that's what I mean.
4,000
I think they'll help give us some guidance and then we can figure out the best strategy. But keep in mind, that's part of the reason, one of the reasons why we have a planner, right, to help us with these types of projects. We did talk a little bit about, and that's one of the things actually I have had Alyssa helping us with as well, is trying to chase down the grant monies that have been committed to the city where we've done something, we need to go, okay, reimburse us, we're ready. So she's been trying to pull together documents and kind of help get that. And we are starting to see some reimbursements come in, and that's good. She can, I think, assist us with this too.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you. Anything further on that? Okay, very good. Let's go to monthly variance reports. Go ahead, Ms. Stephanie.
Thank you. I have the bank reconciliation here where we have the bank balances as of September 30th. We have a total of $17,911,926 in our bank accounts, with outstanding checks totaling $118,000. And all of the checks are listed in the back of your report. There's a complete check report for the month for you to review. Year-to-date income tax collections by category, as you can see, we are at 3.486 right now through September. And that's up 17% year over year for 2022, same period to date. So we've been at like 17% year over year for consistently throughout most of this year. So that's great that we're staying so high in the revenues.
Have we seen any effect yet from the RETA letters? Do you know?
Read a delinquency.
Not yet. So the non-filing letters the responses to those were due, I believe, to yesterday or 2 days ago. And after that date, what RETA will do is they will send out subpoenas based on the responses they got or non-responses. They'll send out a subpoena. If they have collected anything from the initial non-filing letter, they should have those details, and I will request that they send that to me so that we can see how the program is faring. But I haven't received any information yet, but I can ask. That's all I have. I did not have time to put together my monthly variance reports for September, just due to budget and moving and training a new person. It's been pretty hectic. So I don't have that for you tonight. I apologize. But I do have the year-to-date fund report, which shows all of our funds and how much we've spent and brought in year-to-date. And it's looking pretty good, promising, and healthy. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, is there a way, I'm looking at both of these, to have more of like a year-to-date total spend with each vendor? Because I see a lot listed, for example, Time Warner or Connect on this page, CT Consultants, just something to keep it, you can look over here to see the checks, but something to keep it kind of front and center of how much we're actually spending with some of these outside companies that I see. I mean, you can see CT is listed here. I don't even know how many times, but it's nice to know to keep it front and center. Like, we're spending a lot of money with CT, just to kind of, sometimes if we do want to dial it back or think maybe second guess a decision we want to make, we can kind of look at that and just see our year-to-date spends.
I can certainly do that. I can provide as much data or as little data as you would like. So if you want all of CT spend that would go over across all funds, meaning every single penny that we spend to CT, and some of that could be pass-through engineering, could be related to sewer. It's not all related to the general fund. I could be as broad as giving you everything that we spend to CT and Time Warner and whatever vendor you would like, or I can make it more more specific for a certain project. So you kind of, I would prefer to have some more guidance, because it would be a lot of information if you wanted.
Would it be too much to have just the general, like the total, all?
Just year-to-date spend and not by detail, not just a summary of it and not detailed?
Yeah, because I think maybe if we needed to get detailed, then we could say, oh, wait a second, we got a lot going over here. Maybe we should dig in a little deeper.
So like year-to-date.
Get detailed on it.
So year-to-date, what we paid Dan Whited. As he walks in the room. I'm kidding.
If we see something pop up, like, okay, maybe we should dig a little deeper in that, and then we can start drilling down if need be.
Yeah, I can certainly do that. And I can start by giving you the largest vendors that we pay. And then if you want to tell me to include other ones or not include some, would that be a good way to start?
I could do that, or put it to like a dollar amount or something under a certain dollar amount. You know, we don't need to really be as detailed. But some of the larger ones that I keep seeing repeating on a lot of these lists over and over again.
Yeah, I can do that.
I think the next question is gonna be, I mean, he wants a summary, actually, I heard him say, in case we need to dial it back or second guess. If anybody wants to plan to do either one of those, let's get that documented as well. But also, I think he wants to see a summary, like top 10 vendors where we're spending.
Okay,
And I think the next question is gonna be, okay, CT's top spend, what are the projects that they're working on? So, grouping it by project. Because there's some projects that overlap vendors, right? Like we talked about
yes.
some over here where it's like, okay, it's good to see this parcel of land we paid $100,000 for, but we are now investing another $400,000 in all these, either capital or professional services dollars. But I understand what you're saying.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah,
Like you meant.
Have to agree. Thank you.
I'm gonna plan to dial it back as well.
I'll second that.
I can have something for the next finance meeting, or sooner if you would like.
Next meeting is fine. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, good question, Mr. Neff. Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I have a.
Unfinished?
Yeah. Just fun fact. So, earlier this week, the PURG board met and had a board meeting. They have authorization now to pursue legislation for an employer contribution increase from 10 up to 14%. So not to say they've authorized themselves to pursue legislation, and whether or not that'll go anywhere, because that's obviously taxpayers paying that percentage. And so it's not always received well by legislators or the public, but they've been at 10% for decades, and they're making a case that they need to increase that up to 14%. So it may have a budget impact if it goes anywhere, just for staff and personnel, but just throwing it out there as an FYI.
Does they put the match in there as well, or does the match stay at?
The employee portion stays the same contribution, saying it's just on the employer side. So
Sorry, on the employer side, it's already 14%, increasing it up from 14.
yeah, I'm sorry, from 14 to 18%. 10% is the employee contribution, so 14 up to 18%.
Okay, so the employee contribution would stay the
With the
same.
stay the same, yeah, but the city's cost would go from possibly from 14 up to 18%. Yeah. So.
Do the benefits increase commensurately?
No,
Okay.
it's a
Retirement age decrease?
No. It's I believe it's probably the cost of doing business and, and funding. So there's a cash flow thing going on because you have more retirees than ever before. And so, paying out pensions and that sort of thing. So, anyways, FYI.
That's really good.
Good info, yeah.
information.
Yeah.
I did not know that was being introduced.
Yeah.
Any other unfinished business or new business?
No, sir.
All good. Okay. Motion for adjournment, anyone?
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Mr. Grumney, second by Mr. Neff. Go ahead, Amber.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper. Yes. Mr. Martin,
Yes.
7 yeas, we are